problems. So please ask your questions in chat, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to get to it. We won't be covering as much information in terms of time as we did in the first webinar. For those of you that were unable to attend that webinar, it was a discussion around the basic functionality of building forms, how to access the tool, what the outputs look like as far as completed forms and whatnot. Today's discussion is going to be around some of the advanced calculation and custom class functionality that is available on the back end of our form builder. If you've got individuals in your organization that are familiar with CSS coding and whatnot, they should be able to quite easily add this type of functionality to the form. These examples today are some of the basics of what we can do to make our forms look a little bit more professional, enhance the look and feel of them, and add some calculations into the back end of the form performance. We will make these example forms available to anyone that is attending the call today. If you would like a copy of these forms which have the coding in the back end so you can see examples of how they work, you can just email into the help@bistrainer.com email, and we will give you a copy of these forms in your private portals for review. Okay, so let's get started. So what Patrick has done for our initial form is he's put together an example of some of the category point accumulation and category point calculation and display functionality that the forms allow for. So what's important to note is if you see along the sidebar here where you've got your input methods and whatnot, where category AA, 5 points, 10 points, 15 points is listed, that is your standard checkbox field. So that's just dragging and dropping the checkbox field down into the form. Now, once you highlight a form section like the category AA, then it will open up the assignment component on the right-hand side, and this gives you the ability to edit those options. So this is where you can edit out what the options are. But under the category points tab, it allows you to assign the category that checkbox is applying to and the integer value that you're putting toward that checkbox. So as you can see in 5 points, category AA5 is assigned. 10 points, category AA10, 15 points, category AA15. Now, the number of categories that you can have is outlined under the instructional template. You can have any category from A to Z, and any category from AA to double Z, and then any category combinations of those 26 categories times 2. So basically there are hundreds of thousands of permutations of categories that you can assign within a system. You could have A, double B, A, C, B, anything that you wanted to do as far as categories. And this allows you to break your scored or audited form into as many scoring components as you wish. So entering into what each of the input models is for the number of points gives you the ability for the form to collect what the tally would be. Displaying that tally is a function of our dynamic text field. So when you drag one of these dynamic text fields into place, this gives you the ability to then display a calculated field that takes those values from your inputs and displays them in a response. So the calculated dynamic text field is listed here under category AA on the right-hand side. When we highlight that, it simply is initiated as a calculated field, and then you can see the equation is number sign cat underscore AA number sign. So that gives you the ability then to say if whatever is checked off here in this box will display in a subtotal here within this category field. Now, as an example of that, I've launched the form in its preview mode, and I've launched this in the preview mode on what the form would look like to your respondents. As you can see, you've got category AA, 5, 10, 15 points, and then you have category AA total. So when we select 5 points, the total updates to 5. If we select 10 points, total updates to 15, and then when we add additional 15 points, it updates to 30 as far as the total. Now, obviously, in this scenario, we are allowing multiple choice entries, so the respondent can provide as many of the options as they want. In the checkbox options within the form system, there is also the ability to ensure that this is a single choice or a radial choice, in which case then the respondent can only provide a single response, and the calculated field will simply show what that total is. So moving down from there, We have an example application, so an example of a practical application of this pre-work safety checklist. As you can see, we have PPE worn, FLRA completed, work permit toolbox talk completed, and then you just simply have a tally of requirements out of 4 that are met. As the respondent provides their responses in them, the system will simply update to say, well, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4 are met in total. So again, nice simpler output on the form for spot checks to ensure that the amount of data that's being collected is what is required. Okay, further down on this example form, we have category points, perform calculations, and then display a completely different result based upon those multiple inputs. So in this example, points are accumulated from categories A, B, and AC, displayed with a text, and then displayed as a total in the calculated field to the right-hand side. So same logic applies under category AB, 5, 10, and 15 points, and as you can see within those categories, we simply have AB5, AB10, AB15. Then we have a drop-down list to the right of that for category AC that allows for AC5, AC10, and AC15, and as you can see, we have a number of those drop-down options. The calculated field to the right then gives you an equation that is category AB equals plus this, or plus AC, or total and whatnot. So those calculated field entries then look like this in the final form. We can indicate 5 points, and you can see we've got category AB equals 5, AC equal to 10 points, and therefore the total calculation for both categories is a total of 15. As we add additional components, it will handle those additional calculations. Another example of that type of application is, let's say, assessment risk rating. So right now we have loss severity potential and then probability of occurrence in the 2 calculated fields, and then a risk rating. So our loss severity potentials, major, serious, and minor, and we have the appropriate category of points assigned to it. Probability of occurrence, completely different category with a number of points assigned to it. And then our risk rating actually takes into a calculation amount a multiplication of those 2 values as far as the equation calculation. So your end result is a drop down of major loss severity with a probability of occurrence high, your risk rating of 900 in this particular category, so 30 times 30 as opposed to a low risk rating, which would be 150 in this particular category. Most organizations that are doing risk assessments are looking for these types of risk ratings that you would encode, less so than the actual inputs from the assessments. The next section is related to category points in a Likert scale. Now, Likert scale entries can get a little bit more complex because you have multiple statements and then multiple responses within each of those statements. So when you are assigning category points on this, you can expect the number of categories and the number of integer values to be a significantly larger number that you have to keep in mind. The scoring component is identical, though, in how you map out that calculation. The end result is you have multiple fields, statement 1, 5 points, statement 2, 0 points, statement 3, not applicable. And then as you can see on the right-hand side, we have an example where in that calculation, we're listing 5 points achieved out of the possibility of 10. And as you can see, Patrick has simply coded it with a plus possible word so that it shows that in the calculated field on the right. Example of a practical application for this is a safety audit. Is there a safety plan in place? Is there an org chart? And so on and so forth. So as we are indicating, yes, we are showing a percentage value in this case in the calculated field of how their performance is overall on the multiple inputs that are available. The calculated field in that obviously just has plus percentage listed at the end, so that the system is providing a percentage calculation instead of the actual number of checkboxes that are provided. And then explain further at the bottom is simply a text field that Patrick has placed in there, and that's made required based upon the responses that are provided. So you can, within a Likert scale functionality, you can make a category, expand that action within the response based upon data that's provided by the person completing the form. So as you can see, if the answer is no, then show text field 43 and make it required. So basically, as long as there's a yes in this column, this explain further field remains hidden. As soon as a no is indicated, that text field will populate within the bottom of the form, and that is, again, a function of the actionable items associated to an input field. And each of the individual inputs in that Likert scale have a response applicable. So and it's always an if-then response. If there is a safety plan yes, then there is no action. If there is a safety plan no, then show TF43. If there is a safety plan not applicable, then also show TF43. And the field is denoted in the right-hand side under the designation for that field. TF denotes text field, underscore 43 is the 43rd version of that, of a text field in this particular form. So those are some examples of calculated fields that can be done. The nomenclature around those calculated fields is the same as any sort of CSS coding. It's just important that you denote that the field that is handle is calculated is indicated as such when you are placing it in the form, so that our system realizes it's not just a simple display of what's entered into that box. It is going to be calculated based upon other inputs in other fields on the form. I will take just a couple moments here. If there are any questions from that in the chat boxes, please feel free in the next 30 seconds or so to start entering that, and then I'll hopefully be able to respond to at least a couple of them before we move on. Anything, ladies? Okay. Again, I will wait about 30 seconds before proceeding to the next form. All right, we are moving on to our advanced display form, and this is the concept behind this form is more functionality around how we can make the forms look as opposed to the calculations that are completed within them. So I'm just going to launch a preview to make sure that's accessible in the back end of this form. So as you can see in the first example, we want to talk about titles. Now this is one of the challenges that I faced when I started building forms, is there's scenarios where we don't want a title on a field because it's not pertinent to a different section, or there's no reason to denote the additional information. We just want to be able to collect a response from a checkbox or a drop-down or whatnot. So the form functionality, when it's in its basics of drag and drop, every form field has a title on it, and almost every form field has a requirement to have something inputted in that title. This feature gives you the ability to hide that title in a scenario where you don't want it. So as you can see in an example, the designation is simply no title, like it is written here. And Patrick has been kind enough to build one with first choice and second choice as two options. What that output looks like, if you provide it with no title, is, and I apologize for the bold on example 1 checkbox and example 2 in a text field, there would typically be a title right above this line with title hidden with no title class, or title hidden with no title class. All Patrick has done in the designations of this is under custom class entered no title. So NO capital TITLE, and that will tell our system to hide that particular title within that type of field associated to it. So each of those, as you can see when I highlight them, has that custom class entry. So pretty simple. It will make your form look cleaner though in scenarios where that title is not required. Below that you have section titles. So that displays a stylized auto-numbered form segment title to be used with plain text fields only. It does not work in the description components. So basically when you are applying a section into these forms, providing the custom class section title simply makes it look different than your standard titles. So as you can see in here, a stylized section, it has a numbered, by putting in section title, it provides that nice 1, and then a grayed in section where the example section title is provided. Again, this will make your forms look prettier. It'll make them look a little bit more professional in terms of development, and then the sections will have a stronger designation versus the standard titles for the input fields within the form. Below that, we have the ability to handle subtitles. Displays an uppercase dark blue large font size title to be used in plain text fields only. So the example in that is auditor title, example title, and whatnot. So in here you can see we've got the example subtitle listed simply by applying the subtitle response in the custom class field. Again, make your forms look a little bit prettier and denote different titles within them. The next one that we have is our header text option. Displays the label with a bottom border beneath and the description in a gray section. It's again designed for plain text fields. So the example of that would be header text, and what it would look like in your output is this. Here is the description section. So it simply highlights descriptions that you would want to call out on the form for additional instructions, not part of what your employees are inputting, part of what the form is presenting to them. The next one is interesting if you are utilizing the system to generate contracts for employees as part of an onboarding process, let's say. You have the ability to apply the legal parties field, and that will then show the parties one above the other in a plain text field. So the entry model for that, again, follows the exact same nomenclature, legal parties and legal parties. So we do have to put this agreement between first name, last name with legal parties in both classifications, and then it will appear like this on your form, as the example shows. We have a number of clients that are utilizing our system for their onboarding process. The applicant is selecting their particular division or department where the agreement is being put in place. Our system will then auto-populate that information into a contract and display it utilizing this layout. The next one, warning text, displays a checkbox label along with all options on the same line, and labels float left, options float right. This is a fantastic use of the system if you need to call out sections of the form that are critical or important. So the warning, this is a warning field example. The custom class is simple warning and then text with a capital T. It will display as I showed there. You get the nice little warning icon, and then this is a warning field example with the response underneath that. So it's, again, a great way to call out certain checkboxes or certain sections of the form. The description beside, this allows the system to display the text in a descriptive field in small letters beside the label, and it can be applied to text fields only. It is ideal for demonstrating formatting. So for instance, in the date of birth field, we've got this set up with a custom class of description beside, listed right there. The formatting then for that particular field shows the description off to the right-hand side. So the date of birth is still indicated, but the formatting is offset from that information so that it's more visible to the person completing the form. The no characters remaining option is the next field that we want to cover. This hides the character count beneath a text field when there are character limits set. So when we highlight a text field, you'll see on the right-hand side we are allowed to assign a character limit, and we can set minimum and maximum. We can say all, we can say letters only, or we can say numbers as far as the total. This then gives you the ability within, so this is without a characters remaining setting, it will automatically display in the preview how many characters you have left. In a scenario where you don't want it to say that information, you can use the custom class of no characters remaining here on under the custom class setting, and then as you can see in the preview, it will hide that characters remaining section underneath that form. To be honest, in most cases when you're limiting the amount of entry, it's very, very handy to have the characters remaining field, but in scenarios where the number of digits are potentially fixed or the employees that are providing inputs, is always a 7-digit number, it's always a 10-digit number, then that really would be redundant and unnecessary within the form, so it would be recommended that you hide it in those scenarios. Section row. This allows you to establish a row element that follows a section title and then creates a left indent which looks good below that section title. So as you can see, we've got an example title, field 1 in section row, field 2 in section row, and then field 3 in section row that are listed. The custom class that's provided in the title is section title, so that it indicates that as the callout. And then the field 1, field 2, and field 3 are immediately offset to the right-hand side. So there's an example of how, again, how you can input the impact not only the section title to do a call-out, but then make the form look cleaner within that section. We also have the option for a bottom separator. It's applied to a row element only and adds a border along the bottom length of that row. So within each of these, field input options, you've got the ability then to have it display with this small little gray line as far as this page break separator goes that will appear along there. That again just helps break up the form a little bit for the person that's responding to see different sections. Single line checkbox displays a checkbox label along with all options. On the same line, label floats left, options float to the right. In this thing, so you can see single line checkbox is the custom class. Under the example title, that would then look like example with a single right checkbox. Paired with no title is the next section that Patrick created for us. So right here, we've got this laid out with single line checkbox, space, and then no title. So then in that case, the example title that you see here is hidden in this section with just the checkboxes floating to the right-hand side. Next section, acknowledgement question, used with a checkbox with only one option. This is a highly stylized agreement box. So in this scenario, you've got acknowledgement question as the custom class build, and then the output look will be like it shows here on the display. You'll have the acknowledgement title, you've got your stylized description of what they are acknowledging, and then you have a single agreement box below that for their check option. Next section is table only header and 1, 2, 3, or 4. So this is used when you're at a chart field. Now, one of the challenges that I've experienced with the digital form builder is the chart fields defaults, I believe, to 8 entries. Each of the individual entries has its own section title, which can actually look very, very messy. The advantage to this is it hides those titles within each of those columns so that you can have multiple columns of input with only single titles listed at the top. In this, we've got table only header 2. The output for that will show column 1, column 2 with the headers, and then multiple input fields below that without section headers associated to each of them. The example here, table header with 3, simply we replace 2 with the 3 in the nomenclature, and then you get the column header on all 3 associated to it. That will clean up your chart style widget that's available within the form and make it a little bit more user-friendly within these documents. If you're curious to know what I'm talking about when I say chart style widget, it is one of the input field styles here listed as chart. So when you drag and place that on, please consider utilizing the table only header 2, or in the case that's below that, the table only header 3 to ensure that those titles only appear at the top of that chart. All right, the next section is your signature and signature date. Used with signature field and date field placed side by side. So this gives you the ability to then combine these components side by side within the system. You've got signature row, no title, and then you have signature date associated to it. Again, these need to be placed side by side. And then what this will look like on your form gives you a signature field as well as a date timestamp. The signature is lacking the title, the date still has the title, but they appear as a single entity on the form as opposed to multiple entities. So those are examples of what Patrick has provided. I know that there are additional custom class entries that are available in the back end of the system. For advanced form builds or for questions on how to clean that up, Patrick here in the BIS office is one of the best resources available to you. If you have a pen and pencil handy, I can provide you with Patrick's email address. If you have specific questions around form builds, understand that he would respond to them as quickly as he possibly can. He's out of office for the week, so he's not going to respond at least until Monday if you have immediate questions. But certainly feel free to reach out to him in a scenario where you would like to know how to make your forms look a little better. His email address is simply PHOHOL@bistraining.ca. So phohol@bistraining.ca. And again, he's a phenomenal resource when it comes to these types of builds. Understand as well as if your organization is utilizing the form system and you would like our office to build these forms custom for you, we do offer that service. It is a service that Patrick provides as one of the things that he does in our office for us, and he can create these forms to spec. Obviously, there's custom development costs associated to it, but it can save your organizations a significant amount of time versus trying to learn the ins and outs of custom class design, whereas he can probably produce the same result in a fraction of that amount of time. Okay, if there are any questions in terms of advanced display, I will hold off for the next 30 seconds before we move on to the basic functionality of reporting within the form system.
If you just go back, there was a question about the auto-population for the custom class for where you had the contract parties.
The signature, yes, the contract parties, sure. Yeah.
So the question was, does it auto-populate based on the class for the contract and the parties?
Yes, so how this would work, and I mean, obviously we'd have to have a little bit more information built into the form for that, is if you provide, let's say, a checkbox field that indicates multiple divisions, so, let's say in the state of a municipality, we've got, parks and recreation, we have maintenance, and we have utilities. So if those are your three individual departments that are potentially an option as far as an agreement between that division or that department and employee, you would have checkbox options where the employee or the supervisor is selecting the department that the contract is pertinent to, and then you'll obviously have a section of the form where a first name, last name, worker information is provided. The form will pull and reference that information as part of this custom class, as long as you are referencing the checkbox or the text field associated to those fields being entered earlier in the form.
And then the second question was in regards to the custom classes and how they function with the SafeTap app.
So currently, all custom class formatting is translatable to the SafeTap app. Where we are running into challenges is as we add new widgets. So for instance, the most recent addition to our system in the forms functionality is the attendance widget. The production of the attendance widget into the online system superseded the SafeTap app functionality by about 2 weeks. So we produced the attendance widget, tested it within the system, made it live and available, and then 2 weeks later that functionality was added into the SafeTap app. So rest assured that CSS functionality and all that custom class functionality and calculation is available in the SafeTap app, unless we are ahead of ourselves as we add additional functions or widgets, in which case there is going to typically be a lag time of 1 to 2 weeks as we repopulate a new version of the app and then produce it for online distribution on both the Android and the iOS store, which also has a bit of a time lag from the time that we publish the new version of the app. It takes a few days before those become available online.
Next question is, will more CSS options be added and how will we know?
Yeah, so as I said, there are additional CSS options already in the system that Patrick just didn't go through. If you have individuals within your organization that are familiar with CSS coding, it is identical in terms of its functionality within the system. So I would encourage them to kind of play with what that functionality looks like. What I would, and I'm going to make a recommendation to our internal development team here, is that we work on additional guide information associated to custom class design and calculatable fields within forms, and we make that available to our network, to ensure that you are getting the most advantage out of the tool as you possibly can. I just can't speculate as to the ETA for that type of a document, but I know it is currently a priority, as the form builder is currently one of our best-selling features on the system. Okay, looks like we have another question coming in. I will hold off for another few seconds. We good? Okay, maybe I was wrong. We are going to move on now into the basic reporting functionality. Now, understand that our third webinar, which is occurring, I believe, on August 29th, it's going to cover off the creation of the dashboard reporting widgets that are affiliated to forms. Dashboard is accessible to any user account that has access to a reporting tab within their user account status. That will be excluded from today's presentation. All we want to cover today is how to generate aggregate data and basic data from the completions of forms. So I'm just going to close down these additional windows that I have accessed here to show you where these reports are accessed. So when you go into any editable or administrative view of a form, which is what I'm showing you right now, at the top of that form there is a report button. Now, that report button only appears once a title has been added to a form and that form has been saved. So when you launch a brand new form, understand it's not going to a preview there until you've actually created some data within our system. When you select that report button, it's going to take you to a reporting page which is designed for you to select which pieces of data you want separated out from the forms, or whether you want all data included. So as you can see in the first section, we've got the date submitted. So this system allows you to select a date range from what length of time you're looking for those forms. So if we were to select July 1st through till today, that will give our system the ability to reference which forms are stored in our database. Now, the filters on the side are related for or and. That is in scenarios where you have multiple inputs on a form and you want, in a scenario where it's or, let's say there's a gender selection at the top of the form, male and female, you can say, I want all forms where the entry is male, or I want forms where the entry is female, and then the system will generate for both. Or if you select and, then all variables must be applicable. So actually that gender option is a very bad example in that case, because it's not going to be male and female. It would be a scenario where, let's say there's a checkbox of, yes, there was an incident, it involved personal injury and it involved vehicle. So as long as both personal injury and vehicle are selected, then the system will generate that form result for you and exclude any forms where both are not selected. Now, as you can see, as we scroll down through this, this data within the form, the system allows you to select which output options you're looking for. So you can say, I want or, and I want it where example 1, or I want it where this particular example was checked. So the system will locate forms within that date range where either this is checked or where this is checked, and then output the data affiliated to those forms. And then obviously you can granularize that data even further, where you can say, I only want examples, yes, where there is a yes checked, no is provided, and then it will remove the overarching example for only that first choice. The options that are along the bottom here were source document, summary report, and detailed report. If you select the source document button, it will generate PDF views of each of the forms that fall within the criteria that you selected. So again, within that date range, and again within your and or filter, and it will reproduce each of the individual forms for you in their PDF output. A summary report generates a limited data set field that shows you the data that you're looking for in a single page summary with details like text fields and whatnot for the most part hidden. So it's just going to give you a nice little clean breakdown of what those form inputs. If you're looking for aggregate data on how many were actually assigned, how many were in progress, how many of the forms had first choice, second choice filled in, how many of those forms where this example was yes or no. That type of information is provided in a summary. And then a detailed report generates a significantly larger Excel-based report that will give you each of your columns along the top with every input listed. So in areas where you have text fields provided, it will provide you your text output. Each row represents a unique form. So if you have 30 forms calculated over time, expect that all 30 of the initial rows within this Excel spreadsheet would be filled out and complete for you. So this is significantly handier if you are exporting data into a third-party system, or if you're analyzing those data, or or creating bar graphs, charts, or whatnot from the responses that are provided within those forms. So what's important to note when you're dealing with the basics of reporting is each form that you create within our platform is its own unique reporting algorithm. So if we launch a single form, we have the ability to report on all data collected within that particular form, because that form will have a checkbox 1 with certain checkboxes affiliated to it. It will have a text field 2 with certain text inputs affiliated to it. If you were to open up a completely independent form, that form is now its own independent algorithm of reporting, and it has its own checkbox 1 and its own text field 2. Currently within our system, the only limitations around data reporting is you cannot combine reporting from 2 independent forms. That would be something that you would have to manually calculate within a third-party system, combining those fields from the Excel spreadsheets. You can run reports on Form A, run reports on Form B, not a combination of Form A and B. That functionality is in the works, though. We don't have an ETA on it, but we are looking at functionality that will be able to combine that aggregate data together to output a completely different third set of variables based upon the responses of multiple forms. So that is, for the most part, the basics of reporting within the form section. Are there any questions about it?
Do you plan to provide a dashboard showing form responses?
Yeah, so as I indicated at the when we started the discussion around reporting, there is dashboard reporting functionality available within our system. I'm going to log out and go into a sandbox environment to show you examples of our reporting. So our reporting dashboard, again, we are not going to get into this today. It's a little bit more advanced in terms of building out these widgets. It will be the topic of the entire next webinar on the 29th. But within here, you have the ability to create widgets that do pie charts, bar graphs, line graphs, related to responses from any amount of data that's in our system, including forms. So you can generate reporting from a specific form in whatever type of format that you want to, based upon the responses of certain checkboxes, certain fields within those forms or whatnot. So if you want to know how many times there was a personal injury indicated on your incident forms in the last 6 months, or by month, this system will map that out for you and give you on-demand, real-time, dashboard-based reporting. The important thing about, or the fantastic thing about the reporting dashboards is that each individual managerial account in the system can custom configure their own dashboard widgets so that you don't have to look at the data that somebody else in your organization is interested in seeing. You only see the dashboards that you would like to see on your own user account. This will be covered in extreme detail, again, on August 29th, just because the setting up and configuration of the widgets is a discussion unto itself.
We had one last question that went back a little bit to the calculated fields. Mm-hmm. If we can show how a hidden field based upon the score of a category works.
A hidden field based upon the score of a category. So we're doing a calculation. I'm assuming we're doing a calculation from inputs that don't provide a visible response on a form?
So on your calculated fields, you are able to select the actions to either hide or show your calculated fields. So if you didn't want a field to display a score, for example, you could do that. You can also not show your total calculation until the an actual category has been selected. So for example, if you wanted to select 5 points, your total score maybe would not be displayed until that checkbox was selected, if that's what you're looking for.
Total score. I know that there is the functionality to do so. I would have to defer that question off to Patrick, though. Yes, go ahead.
I believe it would be using categories and actions at the same time. So saying, if you select this category, you get 5 points, and you show this field. That's the only thing I could think of that would be both the category and the action showing that hidden field.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Whoever is asking that question, if you could formulate that into an email and you can send that to scott@bistraining.ca, I'll ensure I get a response for you on that. Hopefully with a fancy Jing video attached to it or something to show you the actual process to make that happen. That's it? Okay, so a little quicker than the hour. So again, in respecting everyone's time, I will close off our web conference at this point. Again, if you have any additional follow-up questions, please feel free to email into our office at help@bistrainer.com. Or if your preference is to contact me directly, my email address is scott, S-C-O-T-T, @bistraining.ca. I'm more than happy to assist you and make sure that the answers to your questions come from the appropriate parties here within the office. Again, we have recorded this video today. We will make this available via a web link as soon as possible after the session today. So if you have members of your teams that were unable to attend, you'll be able to share that information with them. Again, I'll reinforce that if you would like copies of these two forms that outline category point functionality or outline custom class functionality as it currently exists, please email the help desk and we will make these forms available within your private custom portals so that you can reference and learn from them in the future. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We look forward to having you join us again on August 29th for the dashboard reporting widget. And if there's any additional of these types of webinars that you would like to see in the future, please feel free to let our team know. We're looking at ways that we can better support our industry partners and whatnot by providing more information on the back-end functionality of our system. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day and a great rest of your week.